Humanity's strongest awakened died after everyone else, then opened his eyes 20 years earlier inside a stranger's battered body. Instead of wasting that second life, Su Hyun chose the tower's maximum difficulty from his very first trial. 4 bullies were already surrounding him when consciousness returned, angry because their usual victims suddenly looked straight through them. One swung first, and Su Hyun's old combat instincts sent the attacker flying before his weak new body could understand what happened. This body had awakened potential, while Su Hyun carried decades of experience from a future destroyed by monsters. Its maximum difficulty offered deadlier enemies, but it also offered the rewards in growth. Ordinary rookies were too afraid to chase. Within hours, he cleared the first floor at the hardest setting, and transformed from helpless teenager into a genuine awakened. From that moment, every perfect clear became another step toward changing the apocalypse that had already killed everyone once. At the police station, Su Hyun learned the body owner's name by repeating what the fleeing bullies had called him. A calendar revealed the bigger shock. He had returned roughly 20 years before his final battle against Fafnir. In that ruined future, humanity vanished while he alone continued fighting, wave after wave until exhaustion finally broke him. Fafnir, king among monsters, personally appeared to finish the last human stubborn enough to keep resisting. As death closed in, Su Hyun remembered being told from childhood that a hero should sacrifice everything for everyone else. Yet after sacrificing everything, he had protected nobody, leaving the title of hero feeling painfully empty. The second life therefore came with one clear goal. Become stronger sooner. Prevent known disasters. And refuse the same ending. The police officer contacted Su Hyun's mother, a woman he had never met, but who arrived visibly terrified for her son. Her genuine concern confused him because his memories belonged to another family and another life entirely. On their way home, that confusion became urgent when a werewolf appeared inside a supposedly safe neighborhood park. Su Hyun recognized the monster immediately. Small outbreaks were already increasing during this period, years before civilization collapsed. His mind knew exactly how to kill it, but his borrowed 19-year-old body lacked the strength to execute those techniques. An umbrella became his only weapon as multiple wolves attacked, forcing him to rely on timing instead of raw power. He wounded one and blocked another, but the body's weak stamina made even low-level monsters dangerously difficult. Then his new mother struck a wolf to protect him, accepting the danger without demanding anything in return. Her instinctive sacrifice stunned Su Hyun more than the monsters because he had forgotten what unconditional protection felt like. Rage surged through him strongly enough to frighten the wolves, though his exhausted body collapsed moments later. He still carried his injured mother home, using the address in her wallet because even their apartment was unfamiliar. While she slept, she murmured for him to run and save himself, proving her earlier choice had never been an act. Su Hyun stared at his frail hands, furious that regression had returned his memories without returning his former strength. Then space cracked beside him, and the Tower of Trials finally recognized the dormant awakening potential inside this body. Clearing the first floor would officially awaken him. Climbing higher would increase stats, skills, resources, and access to stronger challenges. Unlike ordinary rookies, Su Hyun knew that floor number alone did not determine the value of a tower clear. Each trial offered difficulty levels from 1 through 10, and harder settings could produce dramatically better rewards. He selected level 10 immediately, accepting that one mistake could destroy his second life before it truly started. A weapon selection appeared, and Su Hyun chose a sword because decades of combat had already made it an extension of himself. The first trial threw stronger monsters at a body that had barely awakened, forcing experience to compensate for weak statistics. Hours later, he returned to reality transformed enough that the same werewolves no longer looked threatening. One attack sent a wolf crashing away, and even his umbrella became lethal when backed by awakened strength. The second wolf fell just as quickly, confirming that his maximum difficulty gamble had already produced visible results. The tower awarded his clear, boosted his stats, and placed him first on the first floor achievement ranking. News reports meanwhile explained why society tolerated these dangers. Dungeons and tower rewards had created an enormous new economy. Ether stones brought wealth, awakened fighters chased profit, and dungeon numbers had increased rapidly since their first appearance. Most people saw opportunity, But Su Hyun remembered the endpoint. Outbreaks escalating until stronger monsters overwhelmed every defense. He examined his new points with the advantage nobody else possessed, knowledge of which early purchases would remain valuable later. At the skill shop, a dark elf merchant named Belly expected another confused rookie she could easily overcharge. Instead, Su Hyun requested jump and transmutation immediately. Two expensive abilities most beginners would never consider together. Jump improved mobility, while transmutation could reproduce useful traits and transform ordinary growth into something much more flexible. Belly nearly shouted when he paid, because a second-floor newcomer normally should not possess that many achievement points. Su Hyun simply collected his purchases, refusing to explain that perfect maximum difficulty clears had already broken normal expectations. He also bought a low-grade mana catalyst, another basic store item most rookies ignored despite its value for early mana growth. Past life knowledge turned ordinary shop shelves into a roadmap, letting him strengthen fundamentals before blindly chasing higher floors. While organizing supplies, Su Hyun met Hakjun Choi, a talented awakened whose future reputation immediately put him on guard. In the destroyed timeline, Hakjun became infamous for massacring every member of his own guild before walking a bloody path. The young man standing here looked nothing like that monster. Instead, Hakjun awkwardly asked Su Hyun to form a party. Hakjun had noticed his intelligent purchases and wanted reliable teammates for difficulties most rookies refused to attempt. Su Hyun rejected immediate assumptions, deciding the future murderer might have reasons history never bothered to explain. His second-floor level 10 trial then dropped him into a forest, while a lizard-like Cheryl race hunted him relentlessly. The objective sounded defensive. Protect a stolen necklace. Survive pursuit. And escape the forest without losing the treasure. Hiding would satisfy the obvious interpretation, but Su Hyun recognized that survival became easier if the hunters disappeared first. He stepped into the open, drew his sword, and turned the supposed chase into a systematic hunt of his own. Each defeated tracker awarded more points, while years of battle experience let him dismantle enemies built to overwhelm normal beginners. The Cheryl leader finally appeared, expecting cornered prey, only for Su Hyun to kill the boss with a decisive aerial strike. Perfect completion revealed the necklace's hidden function. It could heal injuries and remove harmful status effects a limited number of times. Transmutation also captured the boss's berserker trait, giving Su Hyun a temporary method to push physical statistics beyond their normal limits. The reward confirmed his philosophy again. Maximum risk produced resources that could matter far beyond the floor where he earned them. Returning home brought a different kind of reward, a warm meal prepared by the mother, whose kindness still felt unfamiliar. She had gone back to work despite her injuries, then cooked because caring for her son mattered more than her own discomfort. Su Hyun thanked her and quietly decided that protecting this woman would be repayment for the life he had inherited. He knew he was not her original son, but that only made the responsibility feel heavier, not weaker. Meanwhile, his second-floor score exploded across online rankings, where strangers argued over whether this mysterious Su Hyun was even real. Guild scouts immediately became interested, exactly the attention Su Hyun wanted to avoid while preparing for future disasters. A year passed as he quietly climbed, repeatedly choosing the highest difficulty and disappearing on supposed trips whenever trials demanded time. Perfect clears accumulated through the early floors, while Su Hyun kept his public identity separate from the name-dominating tower rankings. He also searched for his former identity and discovered something unsettling. The original man he remembered apparently did not exist here. With no path back to his previous body, Su Hyun accepted this life and committed himself fully to changing its future. By late 2023, he had cleared through the 9th floor and prepared for the first major milestone. Every 10th floor increased trial complexity sharply, making the 10th far more dangerous than the straightforward battles behind him. More importantly, the Green Dungeon disaster he remembered was approaching, giving him roughly another year to build enough strength. At the 10th floor entrance, an old gatekeeper asked for payment before offering the kind of information most climbers foolishly ignored. Su Hyun donated generously because past experience taught him that gatekeeper hints could be worth more than expensive equipment. When asked what he wanted to know, he requested information about the upcoming trial rather than another combat advantage. The gatekeeper gave one short warning: Be careful of the town leader waiting inside the next floor. Su Hyun entered, selected level 10 again, and received a vague mission to survive while saving a town in peril. Before he understood the town's problem, he found a child named Melly running from a giant salamander outside the settlement. Berserker strengthened his body. Jump closed the distance and several clean sword strikes killed the monster before it reached Melly. Saving the child earned no gratitude from the adults. Melly's mother instead accused the stranger of suspicious intentions. The town looked exhausted, hungry, and deeply afraid. Reminding Su Hyun of communities collapsing during humanity's final years. Melly eventually approached him in secret, trading a handful of berries for bread from Su Hyun's dimensional storage. Through the child, Su Hyun learned the settlement suffered severe food shortages, but credited its leader with keeping monsters away. That praise clashed directly with the gatekeeper's warning, convincing Su Hyun that the town's supposed hero required closer inspection. The leader soon appeared and politely ordered Su Hyun to stop giving residents food without official permission. When Su Hyun requested temporary shelter, the leader refused until a pouch filled with supplies made cooperation suddenly profitable. Allowed to stay. Su Hyun quickly witnessed the town's real horror during what first looked like a desperate religious gathering. A resident was sacrificed while neighbors watched silently, convinced one death was necessary to keep everyone else alive. Another sacrifice was scheduled within days, and fearful villagers began looking toward the convenient outsider who had just arrived. Their leader had built his heroic reputation around feeding selected victims to a gigantic predatory snake beneath the settlement. The snake's territory discouraged other monsters, giving the leader an excuse to call human sacrifice protection rather than murder. He secretly ensured the serpent stayed because anyone who regularly fed it would not be recognized as prey. That loophole protected the leader while ordinary families paid the price, turning his public heroism into calculated self-preservation. The villagers drugged Su Hyun and dropped him into the pit, expecting another easy sacrifice to preserve their fragile arrangement. When the leader returned later, Su Hyun was standing alive beside the dead serpent, ready to expose everything the town believed. The town leader panicked when he saw the serpent dead because its continued existence had protected his authority as much as the settlement. Su Hyun exposed the feeding rule, revealing that the leader had sacrificed neighbors while deliberately keeping himself safe from the monster. Grief turned into rage, but fear returned immediately when residents realized the serpent's territory would no longer repel other creatures. Su Hyun answered with the snake's eggs, explaining that hatchlings could be raised without human victims if villagers fed them hunted monsters. The solution still required one uncomfortable change. The people would finally have to defend their own home instead of outsourcing courage. Was most resisted until Melly, the smallest person present, volunteered to learn because he wanted to become strong enough to protect everyone. His resolve embarrassed the adults into action, and one by one they agreed to train, rather than wait for another sacrifice. The tower immediately raised Su Hyun's completion rate, proving the trial measured whether the town could survive without a manufactured hero. He trained residents to hunt, control the young snakes, and share responsibility of depending on one supposedly indispensable leader. Yet the completion rate stopped short of perfect, warning Su Hyun that another danger remained hidden somewhere near the settlement. The answer erupted from underground as a holy bird, covered in blue flame, awakened and soared toward the town. The former leader had kept this creature drugged, hoping to control another threat and restore his destroyed image as savior. His delusion lasted seconds, because the bird recognized him as an enemy and burned him before turning toward the settlement. Su Hyun chased it immediately, unwilling to watch people who had just learned courage lose everything before using it. Its jump launched him toward the flying monster, but its speed and blue fire made close combat nearly impossible. He used transmutation to imitate the bird's power, only to discover copied abilities remained weaker until their proficiency improved. The real blue flame overwhelmed his imitation, burned through his restraints, and left Su Hyun falling with severe injuries. Heat dragged him back to the memory of dying against Fafnir, but this time he still possessed one unused answer. The Cheryl necklace restored his condition, spending one precious use and giving him enough strength for another attack. Su Hyun forced himself upward, struck through the flames, and crashed to the ground together with the wounded holy bird. When consciousness returned, Melly and the villagers surrounded him, relieved that both their defender and their town had survived. The bird's body even provided temporary food, removing the shortage that had originally made the population so easy to manipulate. The system finally awarded complete success on the 10th floor. While the residents promised to protect themselves after Su Hyun left, Melly called him a hero and handed him berries as a farewell gift, an innocent gesture that made Su Hyun quietly uncomfortable. He had spent one life crushed beneath that word, and he still wanted strength without becoming everyone's permanent answer again. The 10th floor rewards included the Holy Bird's flame as a growth skill, dramatically expanding his options against dark and demonic enemies. Su Hyun also purchased a mysterious legendary beast egg because he remembered how valuable such creatures could become after hatching. The egg remained stubbornly silent, but its rarity alone convinced him to keep it, rather than gamble on never seeing another. Next came the Awakened Certification Agency, where legal ranking was required before he could earn money through official dungeon raids. Su Hyun intended to appear ordinary, obtain access and disappear before guild recruiters connected his face to the tower leaderboards. The waiting room immediately became chaotic when an angry rookie protested a disappointing rank while secretly wearing a mana-enhancing artifact. Hak Jun exposed the trick in front of everyone, proving both his perception and his willingness to confront people stronger than expected. Su Hyun greeted him afterward, increasingly convinced that this version of Hak Jun did not resemble the murderer remembered from history. Hak Jun had already joined Ares Guild and reached the 15th floor, yet his expression remained strangely tense whenever the guild appeared. His certification produced rank B, an impressive result that should have made a young awakened celebrate immediately. Instead, Hak Jun looked trapped, another clue that his future massacre might have started with something hidden inside Ares Guild. Then the agency called Su Hyun's name, instantly drawing attention because the mysterious ranking champion shared that exact identity. He released mana into the measuring device, briefly losing control as an oppressive amount of energy filled the room. Hak Jun felt the true pressure, but Su Hyun suppressed it fast enough for the machine to display only rank C. Most observers dismissed him as someone sharing a famous name, while Hak Jun remained certain the result did not match what he sensed. Outside, Su Hyun realized recent tower growth had made hiding his mana harder than expected, turning secrecy into another skill to practice. Hak Jun reappeared just as Ares Guildmaster Dong Yong arrived, and awakened with enough power and influence to make the atmosphere change. Dong Yong tested Su Hyun with questions, then offered guild membership despite the apparently mediocre certification result. Su Hyun refused because Dong Yong's treatment of weaker people already revealed more about his character than any recruitment speech could hide. The guildmaster defended brutality as the privilege of strength, claiming awakened conflicts followed rules ordinary morality could not control. Su Hyun recognized an experienced criminal underneath the polished title and decided Ares deserved investigation rather than trust. Online research confirmed Dong Yong had been involved in organized crime long before awakening gave him legal status and greater power. That history strengthened Su Hyun's suspicion that Hak Jun's eventual massacre had been connected to abuse hidden inside the guild. For the moment, another problem mattered more. Su Hyun needed money, dungeon experience, and legal access before future outbreaks accelerated. He applied to a small party preparing to enter an orange dungeon near Gwangju on the first day of the new year. The team included leader Ju Ho, several rank B fighters, and one hooded stranger. None of them knew Su Hyun's real strength, which suited him perfectly because this dungeon carried a secret reason for his participation. In his former life, the entire party died here, but investigators recovered fewer bodies than the number who entered. That meant one participant had murdered the others, and Su Hyun intended to identify the killer before history repeated itself. The moment they entered, a cyclops appeared inside what should have been an easy orange dungeon, immediately shattering every normal assumption. Su Hyun recognized a growth-type dungeon whose difficulty had evolved upward, effectively trapping the party inside a yellow-level environment. Ju Ho tried to hold the cyclops and was smashed away in one strike, proving the unexpected boss exceeded the team's preparation. Before it could finish Ju, Su Hyun intercepted the weapon and shocked everyone by holding ground despite his rank C certificate. More monsters flooded the chamber, forcing the party to split attention while Su Hyun took responsibility for the cyclops. He remembered the creature's true weakness was not the obvious forehead eye, but another eye hidden in one protected hand. His first strike targeted the wrong arm, and the Cyclops caught him in both hands before he could correct the mistake. Transmutation saved him by borrowing a regenerative trait, buying enough time to break free before the monster crushed his body. Su Hyun stopped holding back, combined Berserker with improved skills, and erased the surrounding monsters with an overwhelming energy attack. Ju-ho watched a supposed rank C newcomer move faster and hit harder than fighters several certifications above him. Su Hyun destroyed the correct hand, removed the hidden weakness, and finally brought the Cyclops down before returning to the team. The victory solved only one problem because the dungeon entrance had sealed, leaving everyone unable to retreat through the way they entered. Deeper inside, the group reached a central chamber where the tower-like system presented two survival methods for continuing. They could fight waves for 30 minutes or run toward another exit while monsters pursued them for the same duration. Most wanted the apparently safer escape, but Su Hyun warned that an offered shortcut usually concealed the more dangerous condition. He recommended standing their ground, building a defensive formation, and fighting enemies they could actually see and understand. Ju-ho trusted the reasoning and chose combat, despite protests from teammates who believed Su Hyun was becoming reckless. The monster waves began immediately, forcing everyone into continuous battle, while Su Hyun secretly watched for suspicious behavior among them. Minutes before the challenge ended, the hooded participant suddenly ran toward the exit and was instantly killed by hidden traps. The system canceled the first route and announced that the remaining party would soon be forced into the escape challenge. Confusion spread, but Su Hyun focused on the important question: who had manipulated the hooded member into becoming the first victim. He had already noticed rumors, strange reactions, and carefully planted distrust, pointing toward one apparently harmless teammate. Before the next phase began, Su Hyun told Ju-ho to escort everyone away while leaving the suspected killer behind with him. The woman protested desperately until Su Hyun exposed a hidden mark identifying her as a member of Detritus Guild. In his former life, Detritus became one of humanity's worst threats, accelerating chaos through assassination, and deliberate mass murder. Su Hyun realized this rookie operation was one of their early attempts to build reputation by slaughtering an entire dungeon party. The assassin had hidden behind a healer identity, manipulated suspicion, and used stealth to open the trap that killed the hooded member. She admitted the plan once exposed, confident that the coming monster wave would kill Su Hyun even if she failed personally. Her stealth could hide appearance and presence, but fresh blood still gave monsters enough information to find their intended prey. Su Hyun pointed out that weakness, then watched the creatures turn toward the assassin she thought would remain invisible. With the killer occupied, he faced the remaining wave alone and finally released the holy blue flames gained from the 10th floor. Undead and dark creatures collapsed under the sacred fire, transforming what should have been suicide into a one-sided extermination. Ju-ho had already escaped with the others, but guilt stopped him before he could abandon the man protecting everyone. He turned around, ignored the promise to keep moving, and returned expecting to find Su Hyun buried beneath monsters. Instead, Ju opened the chamber to a field of dead creatures and blue fire surrounding the still-standing rookie. Su Hyun scolded him for returning, but there was no time to argue because the true dungeon boss finally emerged. A skeletal magician introduced itself as a dark priest lich, offended when Ju-ho treated it like an ordinary pile of bones. Su Hyun deliberately provoked the creature until it focused on him, reducing the chance that Ju would become its first target. The unfinished lich raised dead monsters, teleported constantly, and protected the lifestone that served as its vulnerable core. Holy flames prevented the undead from crossing a defensive circle, giving Ju a temporary safe zone during the boss fight. Su Hyun attacked repeatedly, but teleportation let the lich avoid direct hits, while death energy slowly corrupted his sword. Ju refused to remain useless inside the barrier, and began using the holy flames around him to support attacks against nearby undead. Seeing that courage, Su Hyun changed his plan and asked Ju to coordinate instead of merely surviving behind protection. Their wind and holy fire combined into a larger attack that forced the lich to reveal exactly how it intended to escape pressure. Su Hyun then let the boss focus on his damaged weapon, while Ju moved behind it with a fresh sword. The Lich celebrated Su Hyun's shattered blade 1 second too early, and Ju destroyed its life stone from the blind side. As the Lich died, it warned that its king would eventually return, giving Su Hyun another sign the future might be accelerating. Ju-ho admitted Su Hyun could probably have killed the boss alone, but appreciated being trusted with the decisive strike. Rescue teams already surrounded the dungeon entrance, creating a new problem because Su Hyun still wanted his real strength hidden. Ju volunteered to face the authorities, while Su Hyun escaped quietly with the dungeon rewards through a less visible route. He handed Su Hyun most of the ether stones, arguing that the person who carried the battle deserved the larger share. During the taxi ride home, Su Hyun accepted another uncomfortable truth. Changing the future would require trustworthy allies. Not solitary strength. He had once become humanity's final survivor by fighting alone, and that outcome was exactly what he intended to prevent. The dungeon loot also solved his immediate financial problem, especially after he discovered a high-grade stone among the rewards. At an ether stone buyer, the director tried questioning how a rank C rookie could possess material from a yellow dungeon. Su Hyun recognized the bargaining tactic and revealed an even rarer life stone, instantly destroying the man's attempt to lower the price. He walked away with enough money to stop depending on his mother and finally improve both of their lives. Returning home, however, he noticed a fresh injury on her face from violence that had erupted at her workplace. She insisted on continuing because she wanted to pay his future college expenses and become a mother he could respect. Those words contrasted painfully with memories of his former mother, demanding that he become humanity's greatest hero. Su Hyun finally revealed that he had awakened and wanted to pursue dungeon work instead of following the normal university path. His mother asked only whether the decision was truly his, then accepted it after hearing that he genuinely wanted this life. When Su Hyun showed his earnings, her shock turned into delighted planning for better meals and a less exhausting future. Watching her smile, he silently promised the original owner of this body that his mother would never be abandoned. Money solved comfort, but Su Hyun's battered equipment reminded him that future fights required a weapon worthy of his growing power. He traveled to a remote forge owned by Dejo Kim, the weaponsmith who had crafted his legendary blade in the former timeline. Dejo initially refused service with his usual terrible attitude, demanding that the unknown visitor stop bothering his private workshop. Su Hyun changed his mind by revealing the premium ether material taken from the Gwangju dungeon's reward chest. The blacksmith's irritation vanished immediately, because material that rare offered the kind of challenge a true craftsman could not ignore. Su Hyun refused a normal commercial arrangement and instead gave Dejo freedom to create the best sword the material allowed. That trust reminded him of their former life relationship, when Dejo had supported an exhausted hero without asking for fair compensation. Dejo accepted the challenge and offered temporary weapons from his shop, while warning the custom sword would require months of work. Su Hyun left satisfied, determined that this time the who once supported him would survive long enough to enjoy peace. He returned to the tower and cleared floor after floor at maximum difficulty, pushing through the 11th to the 18th. 6 months of relentless progression transformed his statistics, while the outside world continued wondering how one climber dominated every ranking. During that period, Su Hyun reconnected with Ju-ho, who had also resumed dangerous tower training after their dungeon experience. Ju had been hospitalized after pushing himself hard, but insisted he could not grow by avoiding every challenge that frightened him. Su Hyun asked him for help with housing, information on detritus, and a future disaster that sounded impossible to anyone else. He warned that Anyang City would suffer a catastrophic outbreak on Christmas Eve, killing enormous numbers unless preparations began early. Ju understandably demanded to know how anyone could predict a dungeon event months before its appearance. Su Hyun could not explain regression, so he asked for trust instead and offered Ju permission to walk away. Ju chose to believe him, accepting that even an unbelievable warning was worth investigating when so many lives were involved. For Su Hyun, preventing that outbreak required more strength, which meant clearing the 19th floor perfectly before challenging the 20th. The 19th trial dropped him into a desert, swarming with starving rats, whose numbers mattered more than individual power. One bite revealed corrosive properties, turning careless contact into a threat, even though each creature looked weak. Rather than waste mana burning thousands separately, Su Hyun studied the terrain and noticed hollow space beneath the desert floor. He shattered the ground, dropped into the hidden section below, and left most of the swarm without stable footing. A lone surviving rat fled across a trapped corridor and died to hidden spears, conveniently exposing another danger ahead. The true challenge emerged as a gigantic serpent with extreme speed. Skin, magical resistance, and regenerative ability. Dijo's temporary sword could not pierce the monster's outer scales, while ordinary holy flame barely affected its defenses. Su Hyun changed tactics, used the environment to restrain the serpent, then targeted the softer underside instead of forcing useless attacks. Even wounded, the beast regenerated quickly enough that a long battle would drain Su Hyun before producing a decisive result. The answer was the evolved Holy Flame Phoenix, earned on the 18th floor, a summoned form far stronger than his normal fire. The Phoenix consumed enormous mana, but its concentrated charge tore completely through the restrained serpent and ended the trial. Its perfect completion placed Su Hyun directly before another milestone, the 20th floor, where difficulty would spike again. 6 months of preparation had brought him close, but he refused to enter until Dijo finished the weapon built for that challenge. Public rankings meanwhile turned Su Hyun into an obsession because no known rookie had climbed 19 floors so quickly and consistently. Juho met him with a sports car and updates, including his attempts to warn authorities about the future Anyang disaster. The association remained skeptical, while suspicious awakened deaths suggested detritus activity might already be spreading beneath ordinary dungeon casualties. With only months remaining, Su Hyun understood that waiting for officials to become convinced could reproduce the exact tragedy he remembered. Dijo finally unveiled the completed sword, and one test swing shattered Su Hyun's old weapon without damaging the new blade. The sword responded precisely to mana and intention, allowing forceful attacks without automatically cutting everything in their path. Su Hyun named it Graham, borrowing another legendary Dragon Slayer name connected to the weapon he had carried before regression. Dijo laughed at the dramatic choice, but Su Hyun saw it as a promise that another confrontation with Fafnir would end differently. On the 20th floor, a kingdom stood trapped in war, while Commander Maxman struggled to defend an iron fortress. A masked royal advisor demanded that soldiers hold the castle for another month, even if every defender died in the process. Maxman disliked the order, but duty and his reputation as an old war hero kept thousands of soldiers depending on him. Su Hyun entered the level 10 trial and received T complicated objective. Capture the fortress. Uncover its secret. And survive within 1 month. The system emphasized that the defenders were not truly his enemies, echoing a gatekeeper warning to avoid unnecessary killing. With only months remaining before Anyang, Su Hyun refused to spend the full trial period negotiating outside the walls. He entered by force, destroying the gate and knocking soldiers aside, while carefully avoiding lethal injuries with Graham's precise control. Arrows shattered against his blade, guards flew from controlled strikes, and the fortress quickly realized one intruder could overwhelm normal defenses. Su Hyun focused on Commander Maxman because every soldier's reaction revealed that this man held the castle together emotionally. Maxman challenged him directly, displaying strength and discipline strong enough to earn Su Hyun's genuine respect. Their clash also revealed something familiar. Maxman carried the same crushing burden of being called a hero that once trapped Su Hyun. Rather than defeat the commander publicly, Su Hyun used a shadow movement skill to pull him into the castle for private conversation. He admitted the invasion was a shortcut and warned that something inside the fortress smelled strongly of death. Maxman remained suspicious until Su Hyun pointed out that a genuine enemy could have destroyed the castle instead of sparing every defender. The commander finally led him toward an abandoned underground prison where unexplained deaths had occurred generations earlier. Before they could investigate, the masked royal advisor appeared, claiming the intruder had manipulated Maxman into betraying the kingdom. Su Hyun attacked first, and the corpse immediately exposed the truth by rising again after its human disguise collapsed. The advisor was a lich, confirming that the death saturating the fortress came from something far worse than ordinary war. Its magic clashed evenly with Su Hyun's holy flames, proving this was a genuine high-level lich rather than the unfinished dungeon boss. Su Hyun targeted the creature's lifestone, But the Lich kept distance and used the prison's accumulated darkness as a massive advantage. Then 2 more Liches appeared, revealing that the fortress had become the center of an operation hidden beneath the kingdom's war. The monsters had murdered the real king, infiltrated his leadership, and manipulated the conflict to create an enormous human sacrifice. Their goal was summoning the Lich King, an enemy Su Hyun remembered defeating only after the world had already suffered catastrophic damage. Maxman's order to fight until every soldier died suddenly made sense. The defenders themselves were meant to power the ritual. The Liches trapped Su Hyun and Maxman inside a death spell designed to crush anything caught within its darkness. Maxman broke through using paladin power, revealing a holy affinity that made him far more useful than Su Hyun initially expected. 1 Lich left to summon undead around the castle, while the others tried to finish the 2 humans beneath the fortress. Su Hyun summoned his phoenix, forcing the monsters apart, and buying Maxman enough space to choose what truly mattered. He asked the commander whether defending stone walls mattered more than saving the soldiers who trusted him with their lives. Maxman finally understood his duty differently, and left to protect the troops while Su Hyun handled the ritual's core threat. To ruin the Lich's preparation, Su Hyun unleashed enough force to collapse huge sections of the fortress without killing nearby defenders. The destruction buried ritual roots, scattered the monsters, and transformed their carefully prepared sanctuary into a chaotic battlefield. Su Hyun cut 1 Lich down, then faced the disguised advisor, while his phoenix prevented another death spell from closing around him. When mana became too expensive to maintain, he dismissed the summon and used transmutation to channel holy properties into Graham instead. A blessed sword let him continue threatening the Lich without burning through the remaining energy needed for the entire trial. Outside, Maxman rallied soldiers against rising undead, ordering them to protect one another instead of dying uselessly for a doomed fortress. The last Liches attacked from separate fronts, forcing Su Hyun and Maxman to trust each other's roles rather than chase personal glory. Su Hyun destroyed the disguised advisor's core, but another apostle activated a massive absorption spell across the battlefield. That magic drained energy from living soldiers and nearby corpses, meaning every earlier death would have made the final enemy stronger. The gatekeeper's warning became perfectly clear. Avoiding casualties had not been morality alone, but the key to weakening the ritual. Maxman answered with sanctuary purification, shielding his soldiers from darkness, even though the technique consumed his own lifespan. With the army protected, Su Hyun shattered the final Lich staff. Stone. An existence beneath concentrated holy flame. The undead collapsed with their master, leaving Maxman exhausted but alive, besides soldiers who finally understood their commander would not waste them. Su Hyun steadied him and allowed both men to acknowledge the victory without pretending either had accomplished it alone. Where Juho's warning reached the Awakened Association, where officials reacted to the predicted Anyang outbreak with open disbelief. Association leaders argued that dungeon outbreaks followed established delays and that evacuating hundreds of thousands on an unverified prediction could destroy careers. Ju countered that dungeon behavior was already changing, making old rules dangerous when 600,000 residents might be at risk. The director still refused, preferring the safety of standard procedure over responsibility for an emergency nobody could yet prove. Back in the tower, Su Hyun received maximum completion, enormous achievement points, and statistics finally approaching recognized rank S standards. The trial also showed him something uncomfortable. Even his best plans improved when reliable people like Maxman handled responsibilities beside him. Maxman thanked Su Hyun for showing that his real duty was protecting soldiers, not preserving the image of an invincible war hero. Su Hyun understood the lesson went both ways because his own habit of carrying everything alone had helped destroy him before. The tower awarded him the title Hero Immortal, another heroic label that felt less suffocating after what had happened here. He returned to reality heavily injured and immediately tried leaving the hospital before doctors considered the idea remotely reasonable. Juho arrived furious and amazed that Su Hyun had completed the 20th floor in roughly 1 day outside the trial. Their conversation turned serious when Ju admitted the association refused to evacuate Anyang or publicly recognize his warning. Worse, most available awakened fighters were being drawn toward a different green dungeon appearing in Ansan, just like the former timeline. Su Hyun remembered that diversion clearly. It had prevented strong responders from reaching Anyang until the massacre was already underway. Instead of surrendering to history, he and Ju developed a plan that would force civilians out and force the association to mobilize. 2 months later, an anonymous warning appeared online, claiming Detritus planned a terrorist attack in Anyang on Christmas Eve. Most readers mocked the post, but repeated Ho's public interview pushed enough uncertainty into the city to change behavior. The association hated the manipulation, especially because the warning connected a hidden criminal guild to a disaster officials still considered impossible. Su Hyun spent the remaining time inside the tower, earning enough points to buy an extremely expensive top-grade mana catalyst. The merchant could not understand why anyone on the 21st floor would spend such a fortune on one consumable item. Su Hyun understood perfectly. Raw tower height mattered less than strengthening fundamentals before the disaster he knew was coming. Absorbing the catalyst pushed his mana into a much stronger state just one day before the predicted outbreak. Meanwhile, Dongyong and Hakjun also noticed the viral warning, each wondering why Su Hyun seemed connected to secrets nobody else possessed. In Anyang, streets grew unusually empty, as residents either believed the warning or simply refused to gamble with their families. Su Hyun then appeared wearing a mask and deliberately started a spectacular fake terrorist attack in a largely evacuated district. Holy flames engulfed buildings and vehicles without truly burning them, creating panic and headlines while keeping ordinary people physically safe. His goal was not destruction. It was forcing the awakened association to treat Anyang like a national emergency before the dungeon appeared. Association fighters rushed in, identified the mysterious attacker as Su Hyun, and ordered him to surrender before the situation escalated further. He refused explanations and challenged them directly because every additional fighter sent against him became another defender already positioned inside Anyang. Rank B, awakened, attacked first, only to discover that Su Hyun could disable them with ordinary swordsmanship while hiding most advanced abilities. Associate Director Dawei quickly noticed something stranger. The fire looked catastrophic, yet buildings showed almost no meaningful damage beneath the flames. He realized Su Hyun had engineered evacuation rather than mass destruction, and suspected the rumored outbreak warning might actually be connected. Still, the association could not simply ignore an apparent terrorist, so Dawei requested every reinforcement available to contain him. That was exactly what Su Hyun wanted, because the association director would mobilize against public terrorism faster than against an uncertain dungeon prediction. The elite ACT squad arrived under Rank S leader Yang Yu Park, a man Su Hyun instantly recognized from his previous life. Su Hyun had once trained inside ACT, making their famous coordinated tactics familiar before the current members even began moving. The squad circled him at high speed, building a synchronized pattern of attack, support, suppression, and defensive positioning. They bound Su Hyun with cooperative chains and prepared a finishing strike, believing their signature technique had finally trapped the unknown monster. He used their own attack to break the restraints, redirected the chains, and left the lead fighter tangled in his weapon instead. The reversal shocked ACT, because reacting that perfectly should have required knowledge of their formation before the battle began. Yang Yu stepped forward personally, accepting that Su Hyun was far stronger and more experienced than his official records suggested. Su Hyun wanted to test his former teacher someday, but this night was never supposed to become their real duel. More reinforcements were finally arriving, so he dropped Graham and announced his surrender before anyone could waste additional strength. Confusion spread until Su Hyun checked the time and warned everyone that the battle they actually needed was seconds away. The ground shook violently, and a green dungeon appeared in the city center before erupting immediately into an unprecedented outbreak. Monsters poured out at the exact moment of formation, destroying the old belief that every dungeon provided a predictable grace period. Su Hyun absorbed his harmless flames and finally explained that the fake attack had been designed to assemble this force early. He asked the same awakened who had come to arrest him to help protect Anyang from the disaster now unfolding around them. Shock turned into action as Dawei ordered nearly 100 awakened fighters into battle, while ACT organized evacuation and containment. Even Yang Yu recognized that the supposed terrorist had positioned them better than official planning ever could have managed. Ogres and other monsters emerged at strength, comparable to bosses from lower-ranked dungeons, instantly overwhelming less experienced awakened fighters. Su Hyun advised AT leaders to calm their teams before giving complicated orders because panic could destroy coordination faster than monsters. He then left the smaller enemies to assembled forces and searched the sky for the boss responsible for the worst former life casualties. A massive half-dragon. Finally appeared above Anyang. Exactly where Su Hyun remembered watching disaster unfold 20 years later. In the previous timeline, roughly half the catastrophe's deaths had come from this creature, while exhausted defenders struggled to contain it. This time, Su Hyun reached the boss immediately, using his phoenix to fight in the air while civilians continued evacuating below. Graham could injure the dragon, but its skin remained brutally tough, and its destructive breath could erase entire structures. Su Hyun noticed the familiar opening created whenever Legolas attacked and prepared an expensive one-use weapon saved specifically for a decisive moment. The Dragon Slayer spear carried enough force to pierce the half-dragon and send its enormous body crashing toward the city. Severe injury triggered the phenomenon Su Hyun had been waiting for, another consciousness separated from Legolas, like a darkened human soul. This spirit was Falcon, a knight who had once attempted to defeat the dragon, and became fused with it during a desperate sealing. Falcon had forgotten himself after years trapped inside the monster, leaving his suffering and power twisted into Legolas's attacks. The spirit launched blood-like projectiles at Su Hyun while the dragon attacked simultaneously, pushing even his improved body past safety. A devastating sequence left Su Hyun unconscious, and Ju Ho arrived just in time to watch Legolas swallow him whole. Ju screamed, believing history had ended there, but Su Hyun's new hero immortality skill activated once his health crossed its threshold. His body regenerated inside the dragon's mouth, restoring enough strength for Su Hyun to pry the jaws apart from within. He emerged almost refreshed, thanking Legolas for accidentally triggering exactly the survival ability earned on the 20th floor. With renewed health, Su Hyun attacked harder and finally called Falcon by name, forcing forgotten memories to surface through the pain. Falcon remembered serving Tesserum and accepting the impossible mission to stop Legolas from destroying his homeland. When ordinary victory became impossible, he sealed himself together with the monster and gradually lost control inside their shared existence. Su Hyun deliberately mocked his failure, not from cruelty, but to awaken the part of Falcon still desperate to protect people. The tactic worked. Falcon opened the dragon's defenses and gave Su Hyun the opportunity needed for one final spear strike. The weapon pierced through their combined body, bringing Legolas down while allowing Falcon's consciousness to separate cleanly at last. Falcon apologized for the deaths caused after his fusion, convinced his attempt at heroism had ultimately become another disaster. Su Hyun told him to remember what he had protected instead of measuring his entire life only by the consequences he regretted. Falcon admitted he would probably make the same desperate choice again if returning to that moment meant saving his homeland. The answer stayed with Su Hyun because he still wondered what choices he would repeat when Fafnir eventually returned. Before disappearing, Falcon gave him the armor crafted by his people, leaving behind both protection and a reminder of unfinished responsibility. The remaining monsters fell under coordinated awakened forces. While Anyang's evacuation completed without the mass civilian deaths, Su Hyun remembered. Dowie bowed in gratitude, acknowledging that the entire plan had been reckless, but that its result saved hundreds of thousands of people. Su Hyun cared more about the casualty count than approval, and once assured civilians were safe, his exhaustion finally overwhelmed him. He collapsed into sleep, while the city, media, and awakened community exploded into arguments about the man behind the false attack. 3 days later, Su Hyun woke in a hospital to discover Ju had been filtering calls. And recruitment offers. The note beside his bed told him to rest and eat fruit, the kind of simple concern he had rarely received before regression. Su Hyun appreciated the victory, but compared with the apocalypse ahead, saving one city still felt like the smallest successful correction. His planning resumed almost immediately, until Hakjun unexpectedly entered the hospital with injuries and a proposal that made no sense. Hakjun asked Su Hyun to join Ares Guild, despite knowing perfectly well that Su Hyun had rejected Dong before. Behind that strange request lay a brutal secret. Dong Yong had discovered Hakjun knew more about Su Hyun than he admitted. The guildmaster had beaten Hakjun and ordered him to recruit Su Hyun before an upcoming guild advancement examination. Refusal carried a personal threat because Hakajun's girlfriend Yunan depended on medicine supplied exclusively through Dong Yong. Yunan suffered from a mysterious poison-like illness that modern treatment could not cure, leaving Hakjun trapped by the only available relief. Dong Yong had turned her suffering into a leash, forcing Hakjun to serve the guild regardless of what he actually wanted. Hakjun could not explain that directly. So he challenged Su Hyun. Win and receive the truth. Lose and join Ares Guild. Su Hyun immediately sensed desperation because the Hakjun he knew would never attack an injured man inside a hospital without a reason. Their battle moved toward the rooftop after Su Hyun realized continued fighting near patients could injure people who had nothing to do with them. Still recovering, Su Hyun grabbed an ordinary kitchen knife rather than risk wasting time searching for Graham during Hakjun's assault. Hakjun mocked the ridiculous weapon until Su Hyun used precise mana control to injure him with the cheap blade anyway. That gap in strength ended the wager, and Hakjun finally began telling the story Dong Yong had forced him to hide. Hakjun had known Yunan since childhood, and when her unexplained illness worsened, every hospital eventually admitted ordinary treatment could not save her. Dong Yong appeared with medicine capable of suppressing the symptoms, then quietly made continued access depend on Hakjun's obedience. The arrangement looked generous from outside, but Hakjun understood that one missed order could leave Yunan dying without another dose. Su Hyun listened until one detail became obvious. Dong Yong benefited too perfectly from an illness no doctor could properly identify. He suspected the guildmaster was not treating Yunan's poison at all. He was controlling the poison he had caused himself. Hakjun hated the accusation, yet the possibility matched every unexplained restriction Dong Yong had placed around Yunan's treatment. His fear finally turned into anger, and he decided to confront the man who had spent years controlling both their lives. Su Hyun warned him not to charge in alone, but Hakjun left before caution could overpower the rage building inside him. At Ares' headquarters, Hakjun demanded the truth and found Dong Yong completely unconcerned by the accusation. The guildmaster had expected this rebellion eventually, which was why every kindness he offered Hakan had always contained a hidden threat. Their confrontation became a fight, and the difference between Hakjun's determination and Dong Yong's poisonous abilities was immediately brutal. Hakjun pushed through repeated attacks, but poison spread through his body faster than sheer willpower could compensate. Dong Yong treated him like an ungrateful subordinate, mocking the idea that affection for Yunan could ever defeat carefully engineered dependence. By the time Hakjun collapsed, he had confirmed the truth, but no longer possessed enough strength to escape with it. Su Hyun, meanwhile, visited Yunan and gave her the one thing Dong Yong had spent years preventing her from having, a choice. He explained that Hakjun was risking everything because of her condition and asked whether she wanted to remain trapped by that arrangement. Yunan refused to become the excuse, keeping Hakjun enslaved, even if breaking free meant accepting a dangerous treatment attempt. That answer was enough for Su Hyun, who headed directly toward Ares instead of waiting for Dong Yong's next move. He entered the guild, pretending that Hakjun had successfully convinced him to join, giving Dong Yong exactly the prize he wanted. Dong Yong welcomed him cautiously, still unaware that Su Hyun already understood the leverage. And Hakjun's failed confrontation. The deception lasted only until Su Hyun located Hakjun, whose body was already failing under the accumulated toxin. One remaining charge from Cheryl's necklace removed the poison threatening Hakjun and turned Dong Yong's carefully prepared execution into a rescue. Hakjun regained enough strength to survive, while Su Hyun stepped forward to handle the man responsible for creating the entire crisis. Dong Yong released poisonous attacks that could contaminate the battlefield itself, forcing anyone without resistance to retreat or collapse. Su Hyun did neither, because the tower had already trained him against enemies whose abilities punished a single careless approach. He used Graham, movement skills, and precise mana control to keep pressure on Dong Yong without remaining inside the deadliest poison zones. The guildmaster regenerated from damage and shifted between different toxins, making a simple exchange of attacks completely pointless. Su Hyun answered with Holy Flame, a power especially useful when ordinary wounds and contamination refused to stay manageable. Dong Yong finally realized the young awakener he had tried recruiting as a controllable asset possessed strength far beyond his official records. That surprise did not end the battle, because Dong Yong's poison caught Su Hyun badly enough to threaten even his enhanced body. Su Hyun spent another precious necklace charge on himself, clearing the toxin before it could turn one mistake into a fatal defeat. He could not rely on that treasure forever, so the next exchange became a test of whether transmutation could create a permanent answer. By observing Dong Yong's ability closely, Su Hyun copied the poison trait that had terrorized Hakjun and Yunan for years. The stolen power immediately changed the balance, because Dong Yong now faced his own specialty from someone with superior combat experience. Su Hyun also reproduced the Blood's technique connected to Falcon, combining different acquired abilities instead of fighting on Dong Yong's terms. The Guildmaster lost control of the encounter, as every supposed advantage became another weapon Su Hyun could understand and counter. More importantly, evidence inside Ares connected Dong Yong's organization with detritus, proving the criminal network reached deeper than one abusive Guildmaster. Su Hyun deliberately forced Dong Yong to experience the poison he had used on others, making escape increasingly difficult as the building burned around them. Dong Yong tried surviving through regeneration and desperation, but the fight had already moved beyond anything his preparation could reverse. His final attempt ended with him falling from the headquarters, while Su Hyun left the corrupted Ares operation consumed by flames. Hakjun survived, but Yunan still carried the poison that had controlled their lives long before the confrontation began. Su Hyun gave Hakjun the necklace for its final healing use, choosing Yunan's life over preserving an irreplaceable tower reward for himself. The last charge removed the toxin completely, ending Dong Yong's leverage even after his death and freeing Hakjun from the future Su Hyun remembered. For Su Hyun, that outcome mattered more than defeating Ares, because another person from his previous timeline had been pulled away from disaster. The authorities were far less interested in sentiment when an entire guild headquarters burned, and its master died after Su Hyun entered. Association officials summoned him, expecting explanations and perhaps enough pressure to bring the increasingly famous awakener under formal control. Su Hyun arrived carrying something more useful than excuses, a recording from before the Anyang outbreak. The recording captured an official dismissing the danger to hundreds of thousands of civilians rather than accepting responsibility for a costly evacuation. Su Hyun played it openly, making clear that any attempt to blame him would also expose why his fake attack had been necessary. The room changed immediately because the same people demanding obedience now faced evidence of their own willingness to gamble with civilian lives. He refused to become a convenient subordinate simply because his actions had embarrassed institutions that failed to move quickly enough. At the same time, Su Hyun no longer rejected every description of him as a hero with the hostility he once carried. Falcon, other Hakjun, and the evacuated people of Anyang had all forced that word to mean something different. He still had no interest in performing goodness for applause, but protecting people, because he personally chose to, was another matter entirely. If strangers called that heroism, Su Hyun decided the label itself no longer needed to control his choices. Detritus reached a very different conclusion about his growing influence, and quietly placed Su Hyun on its list of problems to eliminate. Their attention confirmed that Dong Yong had been only one connection inside a much larger organization, willing to manipulate guilds and disasters internationally. Su Hyun could not attack an enemy that remained mostly hidden, so he returned to the tower and resumed the progression. Only he could accelerate. Floor after floor, his previous life knowledge removed wasted experimentation, while maximum difficulty continued supplying risks and rewards ordinary climbers avoided. He advanced through the 20s while preserving points for abilities that would matter against future catastrophes, rather than buying every attractive upgrade. Ju recovered and continued his own climbing, while Hakjun rebuilt his life, now that Ares and Yunan's poisoning no longer chained him. Their paths had diverged sharply from the history. Su Hyun remembered, evidence that changing one disaster could reshape far more than a single casualty list. The legendary beast egg purchased earlier also began reacting more strongly after Su Hyun's progress beyond the 20th floor. He had carried it without knowing what would hatch, trusting the tower's rarity classification more than appearances. By the time he approached the 30th floor, the egg's increasing activity made expert advice impossible to ignore. Korea had an obvious specialist, Hungi Song, an S-rank awakener, famous for understanding and raising powerful magical creatures. Hungi was notoriously difficult to contact, so Su Hyun chose a method designed around the man's strongest weakness rather than ordinary introductions. He posted enough information about the unidentified legendary egg online to make any genuine beast specialist desperate to inspect it personally. The bait worked. But before that meeting could happen, Su Hyun needed official recognition, matching the strength he had spent months hiding. His C-rank certificate had been useful camouflage, yet future international dungeons would require access only an S-rank license could provide. Su Hyun therefore returned for reassessment, this time with no reason to deliberately suppress every measurable result. The certification process placed candidates through several controlled tests designed to examine endurance, mana manipulation, and practical combat ability. Su Hyun treated the first stages almost like tower warm-ups, breaking expected limits so quickly that examiners repeatedly questioned their equipment. During the survival assessment, attacks intended to gradually pressure candidates failed to produce the exhaustion expected from someone with his recorded history. Another phase tested control by demanding precise attacks against mana targets, an exercise perfectly suited to years of deliberate efficiency. His performance kept climbing beyond previous records, leaving officials with fewer excuses to classify him anywhere below the country's elite. Then the final test malfunctioned, and the artificial battlefield produced something no ordinary certification system should have been capable of recreating. Fafnir appeared before Su Hyun, carrying the same overwhelming presence as the monster king that had ended his previous life. For one instant, the regression, and every victory between them seemed to collapse beneath the memory of that final defeat. Fear returned with painful clarity, but Su Hyun now possessed a crucial difference from the man who had died against Fafnir before. He had spent this life preparing, instead of simply surviving until catastrophe reached him, and that preparation demanded action even against a nightmare. Su Hyun activated his mana amplifier, pushed holy flame through the artificial battlefield, and attacked rather than accepting the vision's impossible authority. The simulated Fafnir still overwhelmed ordinary expectations, forcing him to combine speed timing, and concentrated power instead of relying on raw confidence. His strike finally cut the monster's arm, proving that even this reconstructed symbol of his death was no longer completely untouchable. The test released him immediately afterward, leaving examiners confused by the abnormal event, while Su Hyun understood its psychological weight perfectly. He had not defeated the real Fafnir, but he had faced that terror without becoming the helpless survivor from his previous timeline. Officially, the result was simpler. Kim Su Hyun had passed and would now be recognized as an S-rank awakener. That rank opened international dungeon access, higher-level raid authority, and the freedom needed to interfere with disasters outside Korea before history repeated. News of the promotion spread quickly, but Su Hyun's attention returned to the legendary egg that had already attracted its intended expert. Hungi Song arrived dramatically on the back of a dragon, making his interest impossible to mistake before he even examined the egg. The shell finally broke, revealing a tiny dragon that looked far less threatening than the legendary classification suggested. Su Hyun named the hatchling Mir, while Hungi reacted with far more seriousness than anyone expecting an ordinary baby monster. Hungi's own dragon lowered itself before Mir, behavior indicating the newborn possessed a superior lineage and authority, recognized instinctively by other dragons. That response confirmed Su Hyun had not simply purchased a strong pet, he had acquired a creature with extraordinary growth potential. Hungi explained that dragons choose their masters, rather than obeying through ordinary taming, meaning Mir's attachment to Su Hyun mattered deeply. He also warned that exceptional creatures should never be treated as disposable equipment, regardless of how useful their abilities became in battle. Su Hyun accepted the warning because he had already learned that strength gained through trust could not be managed like another shop item. Hungi made his own position equally clear. If Su Hyun ever mistreated Mir, the beast specialist would personally take the dragon away. Sounded serious, but Mir remained happily beside Su Hyun, giving Hungi little immediate reason to challenge their bond. With an S-rank license and a legendary dragon companion, Su Hyun now possessed the mobility needed for the next detritus confrontation. That confrontation arrived sooner than expected when Su Hyun noticed suspicious people tracking him on the way home with Mir. Before he could interrogate the surveillance team, someone else silently removed the watcher, leaving behind only the sense that multiple groups were moving around him. Su Hyun entered his house already alert and immediately detected another presence hidden inside the apartment. A masked woman dropped from concealment and attacked without introduction, forcing him to defend himself while protecting the sleeping Mir nearby. Her speed and hand-to-hand skill were high enough to pressure an S rank, yet she showed no interest in stealing the dragon. That told Su Hyun the invasion was really an evaluation, not an assassination or kidnapping attempt. He fought back seriously once enough mana returned, trading close-range blows while keeping the battle away from Mir. The stranger matched his movements longer than most Korean awakeners could, confirming that an ordinary guild scout had not entered his home. After testing him thoroughly, she finally removed her mask and revealed herself as Jian Park, master of Reaper Guild. Su Hyun remembered Gian as one of Korea's most talented S ranks, a fighter whose potential had been cut short by detritus. Gian casually offered him membership, as though breaking into someone's apartment and starting a fight were a completely reasonable recruitment method. He refused the guild invitation, but the moment he mentioned detritus, her playful attitude sharpened into immediate interest. Gian knew Su Hyun had used detritus's name during the Anyang operation and suspected he had also destroyed the connected Ares Guild. She had spent years eliminating Korean branches linked to the organization. Yet every captured trail ended before reaching its senior leadership. Detritus protected itself by severing compromised connections instantly, making ordinary investigation nearly useless against its compartmentalized structure. Su Hyun understood far more because his previous timeline had already revealed what the organization would eventually do on a global scale. Jian openly admitted she intended to destroy detritus completely, and her hatred was personal enough that even discussing them changed her mana. She refused to explain the old wound behind that obsession, promising only that the guild leader's life belonged to her. Their methods differed, but their enemy was identical, so Su Hyun accepted a practical alliance without joining Reaper Guild. Jian left him her number and disappeared, proving she handled partnerships with exactly the same unpredictability as recruitment. Soon afterward, Hakjun and Yunan visited Su Hyun to thank him properly for ending the poison that had controlled their future. Yunan brought flowers and called him a hero, a word that still made Su Hyun pause even after deciding not to reject it automatically. Mir emerged from his nap and immediately took a liking to Yunan, while Hakjun received considerably less affection from the baby dragon. The relaxed visit ended when Jian called with news about another green dungeon appearing unusually soon near Busan. Even Su Hyun found the timing abnormal, because green dungeons had not emerged this closely together in his previous timeline. His interference was already changing history, enough that memory could no longer predict every date with perfect reliability. Jian offered him leadership of the upcoming raid after Hungi declined, but her proposal came with information he valued even more. Foreign detritus members were expected to enter Korea around the period Su Hyun had warned her about earlier. In his previous life, detritus attacked several countries during the first Blue Dungeon crisis, killing top awakeners and engineering catastrophic outbreaks. Their operation reached America, China, Korea, England, and France, turning simultaneous raids into a coordinated international disaster. Su Hyun agreed to direct the detritus members arriving in Korea toward Jian while he investigated threats elsewhere. Jian accepted the division of work and warned him not to confuse surviving previous dangers with being impossible to kill. For the Busan raid, Su Hyun received experienced guild leaders who were not thrilled about taking orders from a newly certified S rank. Kongyi Lee of Papang Guild objected most loudly, arguing tower rankings did not automatically prove someone could command a real dungeon operation. Taeyeon Kim of Red Evil Guild approached more calmly, while Moyong of Gambler Guild presented herself with an easy smile. Su Hyun distrusted appearances because some subserms hid their mana unusually well. Yet the smell of past violence could not be concealed as easily. Ju joined the expedition too, partly to support Su Hyun during his first formal raid command and partly to keep improving himself. Around them stood dozens of awakeners watching their young leader, with varying combinations of curiosity, resentment, and doubt. Kangyi even mocked Ju as a babysitter, But Su Hyun ignored the insult and asked only that everyone follow orders when danger appeared. The first monsters seemed disappointingly weak for a green dungeon, encouraging several veterans to assume the threat had been overestimated. Su Hyun noticed something wrong with the battlefield before confidence could spread too far, and Ju immediately warned the group to stay alert. Kangi barely had time to continue criticizing them before Su Hyun threw him aside to avoid an enormous energy attack from above. More beams struck the area, and a violent spatial transformation swallowed the raid before anyone could retreat. The ordinary dungeon landscape became an underwater city resembling a ruined Atlantis, although everyone could somehow breathe normally inside it. Beautiful structures stood beneath the water, but silence made the place feel less like a lost civilization and more like a graveyard. A massive vessel eventually emerged through the gloom, carrying undead figures whose arrival explained the oppressive chill spreading across the raid. Its leeches poured from the ghostly ship and attacked, forcing Su Hyun to reveal holy flames before the weaker fighters became overwhelmed. The element worked especially well against undead bodies, letting his sword erase attackers that ordinary damage struggled to finish cleanly. Mir remained close while Su Hyun assessed the enemy formation, because the dungeon's structure suggested these creatures were protecting something larger. The undead captain controlled the battlefield from the vessel, using accumulated souls and regenerative power to survive attacks that should have ended the fight. Every exchange confirmed that simply damaging the captain would waste energy unless Su Hyun disrupted the source maintaining its unnatural recovery. He coordinated the raid while forcing the undead backward, giving the experienced guild members clear tasks instead of letting their pride dictate movement. Kangi continued resisting the young leader's authority, but Su Hyun's predictions repeatedly kept the group alive when the dungeon changed without warning. Holy flame burned through the captain's defenses while Mir's presence amplified Su Hyun's options against creatures tied to death energy. The captain finally fell after Su Hyun overwhelmed its regeneration, and the ghostly vessel's control weakened with its master destroyed. Victory did not end the dungeon, because clues aboard the ship pointed toward a far more dangerous creature being raised deeper inside. The undead had served the Lich King, and their hidden nursery contained something described as one of his monstrous pets. Su Hyun recognized the name immediately: Kraken, a creature powerful enough to turn an already dangerous green dungeon into a massacre. The raid descended farther and entered an area saturated with death energy, where the enormous monster remained dormant beneath layers of containment. That silence should have been their opportunity to investigate carefully, but hidden detritus members had entered the raid with a different objective. Moyong's friendly appearance concealed her connection to the infiltrators, whose plan depended on turning the sleeping Kraken into an uncontrollable disaster. Other attackers revealed altered forms and abilities, proving detritus had inserted shape-shifting operatives among legitimate dungeon participants. Their betrayal transformed the expedition from monster suppression into a battle against enemies deliberately trying to create an outbreak. Su Hyun fought through the infiltrators, but the disturbance reached the Kraken before his team could restore control. The creature awakened with enough force to make every previous enemy in the dungeon feel like preparation rather than the real boss. Moyong's plan did not protect her from the monster she had unleashed, and the chaos consumed even the people responsible for creating it. Su Hyun's mana had already dropped heavily from earlier combat, leaving him weaker at exactly the moment the dungeon reached maximum danger. Ju caught him when exhaustion finally disrupted his balance, refusing to let the raid leader collapse while the Kraken remained active. Instead of demanding Su Hyun solve everything alone, the surviving teams used ranged attacks to stall the monster and buy him recovery time. That cooperation mattered because the creature's enormous body could absorb punishment, while its tentacles threatened multiple sections of the battlefield simultaneously. Su Hyun watched the formation and realized his allies were giving him the opening that his previous life had rarely allowed him to accept. Kangi ignored instructions and rushed into close combat, convinced experience justified taking an opportunity the raid leader had deliberately rejected. His reckless approach immediately endangered nearby fighters and threatened to destroy the distance their ranged formation had created. Su Hyun stopped him with a punch, making the lesson painfully clear before Kangi's pride produced casualties nobody could reverse. Leadership here meant preventing strong people from making fatal decisions, not simply standing at the front and dealing the largest attack. Once enough mana returned, Su Hyun re-entered the fight while the others continued containing the Kraken's movements. Severing individual limbs slowed the creature, but could not kill something with a body designed to survive catastrophic damage. He therefore turned the Kraken's own attack into an entry point, moving toward the interior where its defenses could not function the same way. The maneuver looked suicidal from outside, but Su Hyun had already calculated that external attrition would exhaust the entire raid first. Inside the creature, he concentrated holy power and attacked the vulnerable structure the Kraken's massive exterior had protected. The resulting destruction finally brought the monster down, ending the green dungeon before detritus could turn it into another public catastrophe. Surviving raiders emerged with a very different view of the inexperienced S-rank they had complained about before entering. Su Hyun did not celebrate their approval, focusing instead on why detritus had been willing to sacrifice infiltrators merely to awaken the boss. Kangi received an equally direct lesson about strength after Su Hyun explained that personal confidence becomes dangerous when dozens of lives depend on discipline. Ju compared Su Hyun to an overwhelmingly bright light, someone whose pace inspired allies but could also make them feel permanently left behind. The observation struck Su Hyun because he had spent so much time accelerating that he rarely considered how others experienced the distance growing around him. Ju was not asking him to slow down, only reminding him that people fighting beside him needed room to become stronger too. Su Hyun accepted the criticism. Another small change from the solitary survivor who once believed carrying everything alone was simply necessary. While the Busan raid fought the Kraken, Jian had been hunting the detritus movement promised through their agreement. Her target was Ethan, an operative important enough to know more than the disposable members Su Hyun had encountered previously. Jian defeated and captured him using equipment capable of disrupting mana, preventing the usual escape methods detritus relied upon after exposure. Ethan understood interrogation would follow, so he attacked Jian's trust instead of trying to overpower her. He claimed knowledge about the coming blue dungeon belonged only to a tiny circle inside detritus, making Su Hyun's information suspicious. According to Ethan, an outsider should not have known the organization planned coordinated attacks before those operations had even begun. The accusation did not prove Su Hyun belonged to detritus, but it highlighted the one question Jian had deliberately avoided asking. She trusted his actions, yet his knowledge consistently reached places ordinary intelligence gathering could not explain. After Busan, Jian went directly to Su Hyun's home, rather than let Ethan's suggestion quietly poison their alliance. Su Hyun's mother answered the door and immediately misunderstood the relationship, treating the unexpected S-rank visitor like a possible girlfriend. The domestic awkwardness disarmed Jian more effectively than most combat techniques, but it also placed her inside the life Su Hyun protected. Once the meal ended and privacy returned, Jian asked for the truth behind his impossible knowledge of detritus's future operations. Su Hyun could prove one part immediately because detritus members marked their bodies, while skins carried no such brand anywhere. He refused to reveal regression as his source, knowing that truth would sound less believable than almost any lie he could invent. Jean accepted the physical proof because her real concern was whether he belonged to detritus, not satisfying every curiosity about him. Once that suspicion cleared, Su Hyun asked again what had turned her hatred of the organization into a lifelong mission. This time Jian answered, beginning with a period when talent had made people admire her, while her personality kept leaving her alone. Even her family had eventually abandoned her, and after awakening she entered dangerous places with little concern for whether she returned. That changed when Ki-hun Kim approached and repeatedly tried recruiting her into a small party of awakeners. Jian rejected him at first, capable enough to believe she needed nobody and emotionally detached enough to prefer isolation. Ki-hun kept noticing something behind her strength though. She fought like someone who did not particularly care about surviving. During one dungeon battle, that indifference nearly killed her when hesitation left her beneath a monster's finishing attack. Kun intervened and saved her, then repeated the invitation that had already been refused several times. For the first time, Jian looked at another person and felt a reason to keep living beyond simple instinct. She joined Ki-hun's group, learned the personalities around him, and discovered what belonging felt like after years of rejection. Night's small dungeon victories became shared meals, teasing. Night's routine conversations. Night's and the kind of ordinary memories she had never expected to value. Night's Ki-hun's feelings also became increasingly obvious, until he finally suggested spending time together alone after their next raid. Night's Jian agreed, allowing herself to imagine a simple future, just as reports began spreading about awakeners being murdered inside dungeons. After one successful raid, supposed government investigators approached their team claiming to be examining those suspicious deaths. The disguise vanished when one investigator attacked, revealing strength far beyond any legitimate official arriving for questions. Their enemy was the hidden founder of detritus, and he treated killing awakeners as entertainment rather than something requiring justification. Ki-hun and the others fought together, but coordinated attacks that should have wounded most opponents barely slowed the mysterious man. Jian was knocked unconscious during the battle and woke to a scene that permanently divided her life into before and after. Her companions were dead across the dungeon, while the badly injured Ki-hun remained alive only long enough to give her an escape bracelet. Jian refused to leave him, but Ki-hun placed himself between her and the killer and ordered her to survive. His final charge bought the moment needed for the bracelet to activate, making Jian the only survivor of their group. From that day forward, she hunted every detritus trace she could find, carrying grief, guilt, and unfinished revenge through every raid. Su Hyun now understood why the usually unpredictable guildmaster became terrifyingly focused whenever the organization's name appeared. More importantly, his previous life provided the identity she had spent years failing to uncover. Detritus was led by Jian Huang, a famous Chinese actor publicly celebrated for charisma and charity. Behind that celebrity image, he was a first-generation awakener who concealed his status and used transformation abilities during criminal operations. The disguise explained why Jian could hunt members for years without connecting their leader to one of Asia's most recognizable public figures. She wanted to move immediately, but Su Hyun warned that a careless attack could send Jian fleeing into the Tower of Trials. Their objective, therefore, required destroying Detritus's operational base while denying its leader enough warning to escape. The coming American Blue Dungeon offered the perfect distraction because the organization planned its largest international operation around that crisis. Su Hyun would enter the dungeon and stop the planned massacre there, while Jian and Reaper prepared to strike the exposed headquarters. Their agreement turned one hidden vendetta into a coordinated offensive against an enemy that had shaped both of their timelines. Jian, meanwhile, continued appearing before cameras, smiling for fans, while subordinates discussed missing operatives and the risk of leaked information. That contrast reminded Su Hyun why direct accusation would fail. Destroying the criminal network required evidence the public could not dismiss. Preparation shifted toward America, where the first Blue Dungeon was expected to appear before local S-ranks returned from tower climbing. In the previous timeline, that timing allowed detritus to cripple the response force and turn the dungeon into an international tragedy. Su Hyun contacted Robert Williams, leader of the medical guild, offering information and combat support under unusually demanding conditions. He wanted authority inside the raid and access to the dungeon's rewards if the expected American S-ranks remained unavailable. The request sounded arrogant until events continued matching the warnings he had provided before anyone else could verify them. As the Blue Dungeon crisis approached, Su Hyun traveled to Los Angeles with Hakjun and the preparations needed for an unfamiliar battlefield. The raid included powerful local awakeners, among them Jordan Rogers of Maximum Guild, whose reputation made him an obvious frontline leader. Chloe Laferty of Star Guild joined as another major figure, accompanied by members whose allegiance Su Hyun already had reason to question. Mac River also entered the operation, one of the detritus members connected directly to the betrayal Su Hyun remembered. Outside the dungeon, Jian positioned Reaper for the later headquarters assault, while waiting for Su Hyun's signal and confirmation. The portal swallowed the raid, and the Blue Dungeon immediately presented rules more severe than the normal expeditions most participants understood. Their objective offered two possibilities: find an exit or survive for 10 days inside a hostile environment. Su Hyun knew waiting would only give detritus time to execute its plan, so he watched the suspicious members instead of discussing survival theory. Mac River broke away early, using the confusion of entry to move before the rest of the raid understood why he was fleeing. Su Hyun chased instantly because this was not an uncertain suspicion. He had already seen what Mac's escape would enable in the previous life. The pursuit carried them away from the group, but Su Hyun refused to let a known conspirator disappear into Blue Dungeon terrain. Mac relied on speed and surprise, expecting his role to remain hidden long enough to complete the next stage of Detritus's operation. Su Hyun closed the distance and killed him before that plan could develop, removing one traitor from the board almost immediately. Back with the main raid, Chloe began turning Star Guild against the people they had entered supposedly to support. Jordan confronted the sudden betrayal, only for Chloe to reveal abilities and intentions that made her connection to Detritus impossible to deny. She froze and attacked former allies, while her people targeted other Awakeners, attempting to reduce the raid's strength from inside. The objective was not merely murder. Weakening the Blue Dungeon team would increase the chance of an outbreak once the raid collapsed. Su Hyun returned before the betrayal could finish, forcing Chloe and her remaining operatives to fight someone who already understood their purpose. Chloe expected support from Jian, but the hidden leader had no intention of risking himself once her position became compromised. Detritus abandoned its own people as easily as it discarded minor branches, leaving Chloe to face the consequences alone. Su Hyun defeated the traitors without allowing their internal attack to destroy the remaining raid force. Chloe survived as a prisoner, valuable not because Su Hyun trusted her, but because living evidence could expose the organization outside the dungeon. Jordan also survived, though the damage made clear how close Detritus had come to crippling the entire American response from within. Their immediate human enemy was contained, but the Blue Dungeon itself had not become any less dangerous. The surviving Awakeners now had fewer fighters, more injuries, and a long survival condition in territory none of them had previously explored. Su Hyun's knowledge could guide decisions, yet changing events meant he could no longer assume every monster would behave exactly as remembered. The next threat arrived as coordinated animal swarms, rather than a single obvious boss, pressuring the raid from multiple directions. Their movements were too organized to be natural, telling Su Hyun that one intelligent enemy was commanding the entire ecosystem against them. The controller was a troll druid capable of directing beasts, while remaining protected behind waves of disposable attackers. Killing animals endlessly would only exhaust the humans first, so Su Hyun made reaching the druid the raid's true objective. Injured members needed protection, while stronger fighters created openings, turning the battle into another test of Cornitain's survival rather than solo power. Mir entered the fight beside Su Hyun, no longer merely the tiny creature that had hatched in Hungi's presence. The dragon's blessing strengthened Su Hyun, showing how quickly legendary beasts could develop when bonded to a compatible master. Su Hyun also used Doppelganger to create 4 versions of himself, multiplying the directions from which he could pressure the enemy formation. The druid responded intelligently, identifying the real Su Hyun by noticing which copy Mir instinctively supported. That counter forced him to abandon the easy deception and attack through a battlefield still filled with controlled beasts. The druid's pressure eventually struck hard enough to leave Su Hyun unconscious, while the surviving raid continued fighting without their strongest member. For a moment, the situation resembled the life he remembered most clearly, disaster growing while one exhausted hero could not be everywhere. In the past, that helplessness had convinced him strength alone was the only answer, pushing him toward isolation even as the world collapsed. This time his allies kept fighting, removing beasts and protecting the wounded, while his own recovery ability began restoring him. Hero immortality activated under the damage, giving his body the chance needed to return instead of leaving the raid without its central fighter. When Su Hyun opened his eyes, he did not find everyone waiting helplessly for rescue. They had already created progress without him. Jordan and the remaining combatants had reduced the swarm, turning their endurance into the opening Su Hyun needed against the druid. He rejoined the battle with a different understanding of heroism. Being strongest did not require treating everyone else as baggage. Mir's support, the raid's resistance, and Su Hyun's own recovered power converged on the druid before it could rebuild its defenses. He broke through the remaining beasts and killed the controller, causing the organized assault to collapse with its command source removed. The Blue Dungeon's major threat ended not because Su Hyun fought alone, but because other people held the battlefield until he could finish it. That distinction mattered more to him than the victory itself, because it corrected a belief formed during the loneliest years of his previous life. With the dungeon secured, Su Hyun turned attention back toward detritus before Jian could erase evidence or escape. He asked Jordan to help manage survivors and evacuation, trusting another strong awakener with responsibility he once would have kept entirely for himself. Captured detritus members, including Chloe, could now be handed to authorities instead of disappearing with the failed raid. Their testimony and the attack itself would connect the supposedly respectable Star Guild to the international criminal organization. Su Hyun left the aftermath in capable hands and rushed toward the confrontation Gian had been waiting years to begin. At the detritus headquarters, Jian had already started eliminating compromised subordinates, preserving his identity by removing anyone who could expose him. Gian and Reaper closed in before the cleanup could finish, finally reaching the enemy that had remained untouchable behind layers of disposable members. For Jian, the operation was no longer an abstract guild war. The man inside had personally murdered Ki Hun and everyone who gave her belonging. She entered knowing revenge could destroy her judgment. Yet, refusing to confront Jian would leave that old dungeon controlling her forever. The battle she had survived years to reach began before Su Hyun could arrive from America. Reaper members wanted to storm the building immediately, but Gian held them back because Su Hyun had made one specific request. He had warned that revenge meant nothing if pursuing it sacrificed the guild members who'd trusted her now. Jian understood the comparison because Ki Hun had once died buying her survival, and she refused to recreate that loss. Her fighters therefore focused on containing the perimeter instead of following their master into a battle built around personal vengeance. Inside the headquarters, Jian had already detritus could no longer remain useful in its current form. Subordinates begged for mercy and promised silence, but he considered anyone who knew his identity another future liability. He killed his own people without hesitation, showing that loyalty inside detritus had always extended only toward his convenience. Jian witnessed enough of the execution to recognize the same casual cruelty that had destroyed Ki Hun's team years earlier. She attacked instantly, driving her blade toward Jian before another subordinate could become his next disposable victim. He caught the opening strike with shocking ease and threw her backward, confirming Su Hyun's warning about accumulated first-generation strength. Jian recovered without retreating, because she had already survived this man's power once and spent every year afterward preparing to return. Her shadow-based movement made attacks difficult to track, allowing her to disappear from one angle and strike from another. Jian quickly recognized that ordinary assassination training did not explain her style because too much emotion poured through every attack. Instead of fearing that anger, he decided to use it as information about why this particular woman wanted him dead. He began changing faces during combat, cycling through identities while studying which transformations altered Jian's reactions. Most disguises earned only another attack, revealing nothing about the specific memory driving her rage. Then one face stopped her movement for a fraction of a second, and Jian immediately understood he had found the wound. He transformed into Ki Hun, reproducing the appearance of the man whose last act had been forcing Jian to escape. The sight struck harder than any physical blow, because Jian had spent years preserving that face as something detritus could not touch. Jian laughed when her knees weakened, delighted that his transformation ability could turn another person's grief into battlefield control. He shifted through the faces of her dead companions next, treating every murdered friend as another costume in his performance. Jean tightened her grip and told him those people had been good, refusing to let his imitation redefine what they meant. Jian responded by returning to Ki Hun's face and reenacting the final sacrifice that had haunted her since the massacre. He copied the pleading posture and words closely enough to drag Jian's back toward the moment she had been forced to leave. Her attacks grew more furious, exactly as he intended, and the uncontrolled expenditure began draining her strength faster. Jian stayed defensive, letting emotion exhaust his opponent rather than competing directly with her strongest bursts. Jian eventually recognized the manipulation, but understanding the trap did not erase the memories his face kept forcing into view. She tried hiding her intent inside shadow, waiting for one clean opening instead of continuing the wasteful assault. The adjustment worked, and her blade reached Jian's throat before he fully recognized the new rhythm. Yet Ki-hun's borrowed face triggered one final hesitation, shortening the strike just enough for Jian Fun to survive. That tiny failure enraged him because Jian had come closer than expected, despite fighting under the heaviest emotional pressure possible. He countered brutally, taking control of the close-range exchange, while her remaining strength continued slipping away. Outside, Reaper members heard destruction inside the building, but obeyed John's command instead of rushing toward a fight they could worsen. Jordan and other surviving American raid members also arrived to help secure civilians and prevent the headquarters battle from spreading outward. Su Hyun had asked them to handle evacuation, making containment another part of the promise he intended to keep. Inside, Jian Fun seized Jian by the throat and declared that surviving longer than his previous victims still changed nothing. Her weapon remained in reach, but accumulated injuries and emotional exhaustion left her unable to create the force needed for another reversal. He prepared the finishing attack, certain the only survivor from Ki-hun's group would finally die beside detritus itself. The wall exploded before he could complete it, and Su Hyun entered directly through the collapsing structure. He moved to Jian first, checking whether she could recover, rather than immediately chasing the man responsible for her injuries. Jian Fun recognized him as the same awakener who had ruined Ares, interfered with detritus operations, and destroyed the Blue Dungeon betrayal. Su Hyun reminded Jian that he had promised to help her reach this moment without stealing the revenge she had earned. That meant his first objective was not killing Jian Fun. It was breaking the advantage that had left Jian unable to fight. Jian Fun tried treating the interruptions like another performance, confident that manipulation and accumulated strength still gave him control. Su Hyun asked whether pretending to be different people ever became boring after years of deception, murder, charity, and public admiration. The question attacked the contradiction at Jian Fun's center, a celebrity loved for generosity who secretly created grieving families himself. Jian Fun admitted that stimulation mattered more than morality, and ordinary life simply stopped satisfying him once excitement faded. Su Hyun promised a new kind of stimulation, one based on finally facing someone his disguises could not intimidate. Their first clash forced Jian Fun to abandon casual confidence because Su Hyun's speed immediately exceeded the weakened target he had expected. The criminal leader released more power, dark markings spreading as his body began shifting beyond ordinary human structure. Limbs thickened, features distorted, and draconic traits emerged until Jian Fun entered the rare dragon-human transformation. The skill granted enormous physical strength and dragon-like attacks, making his celebrity appearance irrelevant beneath the monstrous combat form. Jian Fun believed that transformation placed him at the peak of living creatures and finally restored the superiority he expected. Su Hyun answered by summoning the Phoenix, bringing sacred flame against an opponent who considered fire part of his own domain. Jian Fun laughed at the choice and unleashed dragon breath, expecting ordinary fire to disappear beneath the stronger draconic attack. Su Hyun did not ask the Phoenix to overpower that breath, because another companion possessed a better answer. He raised Mir and called for true dragon flame, trusting the young creature to confront an imitation of dragon authority. Mir released a burst pure enough to halt Jian Fun's breath and shatter his confidence in the transformation's supposed superiority. The effort frightened the still young dragon, so Su Hyun recalled Mir immediately, rather than forcing another attack for convenience. Mir had already done his part, and their bond responded with a divine dragon blessing that strengthened Su Hyun further. Jian Fun charged in anger, unable to accept that a baby dragon and a younger awakener had undermined his strongest transformation. Su Hyun met him directly, channeling mana through Graham while using tower-honed timing to cut through superior raw mass. Dragon-human power made every hit dangerous, but Jian Fun lacked the experience Su Hyun carried from 2 lifetimes of catastrophic battles. Each exchange exposed another opening, created by arrogance, wasted motion, or the assumption that raw force would eventually overwhelm technique. Su Hyun cut deeper, and Jian Fun finally recognized the uneasy feeling following him, since detritus operations began collapsing. It was fear, an emotion he preferred creating in others, and had never expected to associate with Kim Su Hyun. Jian Fun screamed that Dragon Human represented the strongest power, as though declaring the rule could repair a battle already turning against him. Su Hyun answered, with action, driving another strike through his defenses and forcing the transformed criminal backward. The first-generation advantage had made Jian Fun terrifying against ordinary awakeners. But the tower had accelerated Su Hyun beyond ordinary comparisons. Its maximum difficulty kept demanding enemies designed to punish mistakes, while previous life knowledge helped him reach those challenges without wasting years. Jian Fun had accumulated strength over time. Su Hyun had compressed experience, risk, and progression into a far shorter second life. That difference now appeared physically, as the supposedly superior dragon human struggled to stop a sword from cutting through his defense. Su Hyun explained why Jian Fun had remained alive even after his identity became known. Killing him too early risked an escape into the tower. With the headquarters exposed and routes controlled, that strategic protection had finally disappeared. Jian Fun realized his survival had not been proof of superiority. Su Hyun had simply waited until escape no longer protected him. The realization hurt his pride almost as much as the injuries accumulating across his transformed body. Su Hyun continued breaking his defenses, but he deliberately avoided delivering the final killing strike. Jian Fun mistook that restraint for hesitation until Su Hyun announced that his own part of the confrontation was nearly complete. The objective had always been to reduce the first-generation monster, enough that Jian could face him without sacrificing her guild. Smoke and collapsing debris filled the ruined headquarters, as the balance shifted from impossible revenge toward a fight she could actually finish. Jian Fun tried attacking Su Hyun again, desperate to remove the person who had dismantled every advantage surrounding him. Su Hyun countered cleanly, cutting his mobility further and leaving the criminal leader unable to restore his earlier dominance. Around them, the headquarters that once hid detritus operations was becoming physical evidence of an organization collapsing from within. Jian Fun's subordinates were dead. Exposed. Or fleeing. While his public identity could no longer remain separated from the crimes. Su Hyun had removed the network. Now he intended to keep one promise made before entering the American dungeon. Jian rose again behind the smoke, wounded, but conscious, her weapon returning to a hand no longer shaking from helplessness. Su Hyun stepped aside and told Jian Fun that he would not attack again while their final duel continued. If Jian Fun somehow defeated Jian, Su Hyun would allow him to leave the immediate duel instead of breaking his word. Running from the fight was different. Su Hyun made clear that any escape attempt would end his restraint instantly. Jian Fun hated the arrangement because it reduced him from untouchable mastermind to an opponent being handed over deliberately. He still possessed more raw power than the injured Jian, giving him one remaining reason to believe survival was possible. Rather than trust that advantage alone, he transformed once more into Ki Hun's appearance. Jian Fun expected the borrowed face to recreate the hesitation that had saved him earlier from Jian's blade. He smiled with Ki Hun's features and charged, turning the memory of love into a shield for murder one final time. Jian's body reacted before thought, but this time the pause did not become surrender. She remembered Ki Hun saving her so she could live, not so his face could keep protecting the man who murdered him. Her weapon met Jian Fun's attack directly, and the collision proved grief could remain painful without remaining controlling. Su Hyun watched without interfering because Jian needed the victory to belong to her decision rather than another rescue. Jian Fun pressed with greater raw force, trying to crush through a fighter already exhausted by their earlier encounter. Jian held the line, turning years of preparation toward the single opponent who had given those years their purpose. Jian Fun still held greater raw strength, forcing Jian to win through control rather than direct superiority. His first heavy strike drove her backward, but her stance recovered before he could capitalize. Jian countered from shadow, making every movement harder to read than their earlier emotional exchange. The Ki Hun disguise remained on his face, yet its power over her had visibly weakened. Jian Fun noticed and increased the pressure, hoping exhaustion would accomplish what manipulation no longer could. Jian blocked another strike, then redirected its force instead of wasting strength trying to overpower him. Their weapons collided again, sending shock through the ruined floor beneath them. Su Hyun remained behind Jian, honoring the promise that this final exchange would belong to her. He could see Jian Fun still possessed the numerical advantage in raw combat ability. Jian possessed something different now, a reason to fight that no longer depended on blind rage. Her movements tightened, losing the reckless openings Jian Fun had exploited during their first confrontation. That improvement frustrated him, because the same memories he weaponized were now sharpening her determination. Jian Fun attacked faster, trying to force another involuntary hesitation through Ki Hun's familiar expression. Jian looked directly at that stolen face and refused to treat the disguise as the man she loved. The distinction finally separated memory from manipulation, allowing her blade to move without stopping short. She struck Jian Fun across the face and knocked him backward before he could change forms again. He blamed Su Hyun, assuming hidden interference had created the sudden improvement in Jian's performance. Su Hyun answered that the strike had been hers, refusing to let Jian Fun diminish her achievement. Ji advanced before he recovered, keeping the weakened criminal from rebuilding distance or psychological control. Jian Fun defended desperately, as the person he once left broken now dictated the tempo. Smoke rolled across the ruined headquarters, while Jian forced him through another collapsing section. He tried widening the gap, needing space for stronger abilities and another transformation trick. Jian denied that space, using shadow movement to appear inside his preferred range. Jian Fun swung with enough force to punish a mistimed approach, but she slipped around it. Her next cut damaged his guard and made one arm noticeably slower. He responded with rage, no longer performing calm superiority for an audience that feared him. Jian recognized the change because the actor's confidence disappeared whenever control left his hands. She kept pressing, forcing him to react instead of letting him design the next exchange. Jian Fun attempted another crushing attack, and Jian met it without backing away. Their power collided hard enough to shake debris loose from the already damaged structure. Neither fighter immediately yielded, but Jian Fun's accumulated injuries began deciding the contest. Jian pushed through the clash and created enough separation for one final committed attack. She launched upward, gathering her remaining strength instead of spending it across several smaller strikes. Jian Fun looked up and understood the next impact could end the battle completely. He formed an energy shield, concentrating defense where Jian's descending blade would land. For the first time, the detritus leader was protecting himself rather than playing with another victim. Jian descended through smoke and drove her weapon directly into the barrier. Jian Fun screamed for her to stop, using command and intimidation after every other method failed. The plea carried no authority anymore, because Jian had already survived the worst thing he could take. She forced the blade farther, cracking the shield, while his injured arm struggled to maintain it. Memories of Ki Hun remained present, but now they strengthened the choice to finish what he protected. Jian Fun's defense broke and Jian's weapon tore through before he could rebuild the barrier. His remaining resistance collapsed with it, leaving no transformation capable of restoring control. Jian delivered the finishing strike without hesitation and finally ended Jian Fun Huang's life. For several seconds she remained standing, as though years of revenge had not informed her body the fight was over. Then her strength vanished and she collapsed amid smoke from the destroyed headquarters. Su Hyun approached quietly, instead of celebrating the death of an enemy whose defeat belonged to someone else's grief. Near Jian lay the necklace connected to Ki Hun, displaced during the violence. Su Hyun picked it up and placed it back into her hands. Jian closed her fingers around the necklace and finally allowed the emotions held back during combat to surface. She cried for the people Jian Fun had killed, not because defeating him restored what she lost. Revenge ended the murderer, but it could not recreate Ki Hun, their friends, or the future stolen from them. Su Hyun understood enough to give her space, instead of covering that silence with unnecessary consolation. He turned away, and his own body immediately reminded him how much the combined battles had cost. His fatigue had climbed dangerously high after the Blue Dungeon and the rush into another major confrontation. The number reached 97, leaving even Su Hyun close to collapsing once adrenaline disappeared. Outside, Jordan coordinated evacuation while Reaper members secured the area around the ruined headquarters. The battle's physical destruction was obvious, but the information emerging afterward caused much larger international damage. Authorities received captured detritus members from the American raid, instead of only corpses and unanswered suspicions. Chloe Laferty became one of the most important prisoners because her position connected Star Guild directly to detritus. Evidence showed that a major American guild had been participating in murders and engineered dungeon failures. Jordan's testimony supported the events inside the Blue Dungeon, where Star Guild members had attacked their own raid. Reaper supplied additional information, gathered from years of hunting detritus branches and operatives. The criminal network could no longer dismiss every exposure as an isolated rogue member. Investigators began examining businesses and guilds tied to detritus, discovering the organization extended beyond one headquarters. The scale created new problems because destroying its leader did not automatically identify every surviving collaborator. Still, the central secrecy protecting detritus had been broken more decisively than at any earlier point. The next revelation shocked the public even more than Star Guild's involvement. Jian Huang, celebrated actor and public philanthropist, was identified as detritus's hidden guildmaster. Chloe's confession described how he used disguise abilities to enter operations without exposing his celebrity identity. Those transformations let him murder Awakeners while remaining publicly separated from the crimes attributed to detritus. His charitable image became especially grotesque once investigators connected donations with families harmed by the same network. Fans who knew a generous performer now faced evidence that his public kindness had existed beside deliberate killing. The exposure also validated Jian's years of hunting an enemy nobody else could properly identify. Su Hyun did not participate in the media storm because exhaustion had already placed him back in a hospital bed. His mother stayed nearby, joined by Ju and Hakjun. As news reports summarized the crimes being uncovered, she reacted with horror to the idea that someone could manufacture suffering and then receive praise for helping victims. Ju watched the coverage and understood how much of the operation Su Hyun had predicted before anyone else. Hakjun reached the same conclusion, remembering how Su Hyun had recognized the truth behind Ares long before authorities did. Their admiration came with frustration because Su Hyun rarely explained the burdens he chose to carry. Ju pointed out that their friend kept solving disasters while revealing almost nothing about what those decisions cost him. The conversation grew heavy beside the sleeping sea patient who had once believed strength meant handling every problem alone. Hakjun decided seriousness had lasted long enough and reached for a pen. Before Su Hyun could wake, Hakjun began drawing across the face of Korea's newest S-rank hero. His mother immediately scolded him, but the prank had already broken the room's tense silence. Ju joined in, adding his own markings while pretending this was perfectly reasonable punishment for Su Hyun's secrecy. They wrote teasing labels across his face, including hero and less flattering comments about his habit of overdoing everything. His mother finally smacked both pranksters, although the ridiculous artwork remained on the sleeping Su Hyun. The scene looked absurd after international terrorism, 2 major dungeon battles, and the collapse of detritus leadership. That ordinary stupidity was also proof that Su Hyun's second life contained something his first had gradually lost. He now had people close enough to worry about him. Criticize him. Joke around him. And wait beside his bed. None of them knew the full truth about regression, yet their choices had already changed how he approached survival. Ju had shown him allies could hold a battlefield while he recovered. Hakjun had shown that changing one person's future could prevent the monster that despair might otherwise create. His mother had given the new life emotional weight long before Su Hyun accepted what that relationship meant. Mir had transformed another tower reward into a bond requiring responsibility rather than simple ownership. Gian had shown that helping someone achieve revenge could matter more than taking the decisive strike personally. These lessons did not make Fafnir weaker or the approaching future less dangerous. They did change the kind of fighter who would eventually face that future. Su Hyun was no longer preparing only to become stronger than everyone around him. Recovery kept him unconscious long enough for another visitor to arrive after the room finally quieted. Jian entered carrying information connected to the remaining detritus members who had escaped immediate capture. Reaper had received a list identifying several remnants before investigators could connect every surviving branch. The source of that list pointed back to Su Hyun, exactly as Jian expected. She looked at his sleeping face, temporarily covered in ridiculous messages from Ju and Hakjun. The sight contrasted sharply with the man who had crossed an ocean and broken Jian Fun's transformation. Jian understood that Su Hyun had deliberately passed destination instead of hunting every remnant personally. Some surviving victims now had enough knowledge to pursue people responsible for their own losses. American authorities could imprison captured criminals, but legal punishment would not answer every survivor's personal need for closure. Jian wondered whether Su Hyun had considered that when choosing where the information should go. He remained asleep, providing no convenient explanation for another decision made several steps ahead. She still possessed questions about how he knew identities hidden even from veteran detritus hunters. Ethan's accusation had exposed that mystery, and Jian Fun's defeat had not solved it. Yet Su Hyun had repeatedly used that knowledge to prevent massacres rather than strengthen detritus. Jian decided evidence of his choices mattered more than forcing an answer he clearly was not ready to give. For now, she would leave the source of his intelligence alone. Her reason for visiting was simpler than suspicion, revenge, alliance planning, or another violent recruitment attempt. Jian picked up the same pen already responsible for the drawings covering Su Hyun's face. She leaned closer and added one final word among the jokes left by his friends. That final word was simply thanks. Then Jian left quietly, carrying Ki Hun's memory without carrying Jian Fun's unfinished life alongside it. Detritus still had remnants, but the man who created her deepest wound could no longer shape her next decision. Su Hyun remained hospitalized, unaware that the room had gained one more message before he woke. Outside, investigations continued crossing borders as authorities followed Star Guild records. Captured members, and Reaper intelligence. The network's collapse would take time because secrecy had been built into every connection Jian Fun created. Even so, his celebrity disguise was gone. Chloe had confessed. And the Blue Dungeon betrayal had witnesses. Those facts prevented detritus from simply cutting one branch and disappearing as it had before. Su Hyun had changed another disaster that once helped push the world toward the apocalypse he remembered. This victory also proved that changing history created new uncertainty alongside every life saved. Green dungeons had shifted timing. Powerful people behaved differently, and some enemies moved earlier because of him. Previous life knowledge remained an enormous advantage, but it was no longer a perfect script for the future. That made continued tower progression even more important. Because memory alone could not defeat threats history had already begun rewriting. Su Hyun still had Fafnir waiting somewhere ahead, the monster king whose power had ended his first life. The certification test had shown he could now wound an imitation, not that the real enemy had become manageable. Every maximum difficulty floor, therefore, remained preparation for a confrontation whose exact circumstances could now change. His growth had accelerated dramatically, because he knew which risks, rewards, skills, and mistakes mattered from the beginning. Yet faster progression no longer represented the whole purpose of this second chance. Ju Hak Jun Yun Mir, and Jian had turned survival into something connected to other lives. The tower gave him strength, while those relationships changed how he chose to use it. That difference separated Kim Su Hyun from the exhausted survivor who had once reached the end alone. Far from his hospital room, another development was already taking shape around the world's highest-ranked awakeners. A plane traveled toward the Golden Tower, carrying two people discussing technology built on an extraordinary amount of ether. Inside, a young woman sampled wine and found the drink far less interesting than the aircraft itself. The ride remained remarkably smooth, evidence of engineering far beyond an ordinary luxury flight. Her companion explained that massive quantities of ether stones had been invested into the structure and its technology. He estimated the project consumed roughly 1/10 of America's available ether stone supply. The young woman considered that expenditure ridiculous, especially for something whose purpose had not yet justified the cost. Their conversation soon moved away from engineering and toward the real reason for the journey. She asked whether he truly intended to proceed with the planned ranking game. The man answered with confidence rather than hesitation, because competition was exactly why the plan interested him. He was known simply as God, a name matching the opinion he already held about his own standing. God believed he was the best, yet public recognition did not place him unquestionably above every other S-rank. Too many awakeners had earned hero titles and reputations strong enough to share the world's attention. To him, that crowded hierarchy felt wrong, because superiority should produce a single unquestioned name. The ranking game offered a way to replace reputation, rumor, and national pride with direct competition. God wanted the result to prove publicly what he already believed privately. His goal was not protecting a city, correcting history. or preventing another dungeon outbreak. He wanted confirmation that every celebrated S-rank stood beneath him. That ambition created a very different kind of challenge from Detritus's hidden terrorism. Instead of operating from shadows, the coming contest was designed around visibility, comparison, and recognition. The Golden Tower represented enough investment to show this was more than an idle conversation between wealthy awakeners. Ether stones on that scale meant serious resources had already been committed before competitors even gathered. The young woman's skepticism did not weaken God's certainty about what the event should accomplish. He had already decided the world contained too many people described as unbeatable, legendary, or heroic. A ranking game could force those reputations into one shared arena and produce an order nobody could easily ignore. God cared most about the top position, because anything below it contradicted the identity he had built for himself. His confidence resembled arrogance, but the resources surrounding him suggested he possessed enough influence to act on it. The conversation ended without revealing every rule, participant, or consequence attached to the planned competition. What mattered was the intention. Another powerful figure was preparing to measure the world's strongest awakeners directly. Su Hyun had no knowledge of that conversation. While recovering from the battles that dismantled detritus leadership, his immediate reality remained simpler. Survive recovery. Return to the tower. And continue preparing for known catastrophes. The future, however, was becoming less recognizable every time one of his interventions succeeded. That uncertainty did not erase his advantage. It changed how carefully he needed to use it. Maximum difficulty still rewarded courage and preparation, but no tower reward could guarantee control over a rewritten world. Allies, therefore, mattered more with each divergence, giving Su Hyun options beyond memories that could eventually become obsolete. Ju could lead when Su Hyun was exhausted. Hakjun could fight free of Ares, and Jian could pursue detritus without dying alone. Mir was still growing, carrying legendary potential that had not existed besides Su Hyun during his first failed future. His mother remained the clearest reminder that regression had given him more than another chance to gain power. Every saved person also created choices, relationships, and consequences the previous timeline could never have predicted. That was the price and value of changing history, instead of merely exploiting it. Su Hyun had entered this life remembering an apocalypse and believing overwhelming personal strength was the safest solution. The tower rewarded that determination faster than ordinary climbers could match, because he approached every floor with knowledge already earned once. Maximum difficulty then multiplied the danger of each decision, forcing his accelerated progression to survive constant proof. He had used that strength to save his mother, change Hakjun's fate, evacuate Anya, and break detritus operations. None of those victories erased the threat of Fafnir or guaranteed that future disasters would follow remembered schedules. They did establish something his first life had lost. He no longer needed to stand against every disaster alone. The strongest tower climber was becoming a leader, precisely because other people could now carry parts of the fight. That lesson had arrived through Maxman's sacrifice. Ju's loyalty, Falcon's regret, and the Blue Dungeon team's refusal to collapse. Su Hyun still chose the hardest floors, the most dangerous preparations, and the fastest route towards sufficient strength. But the reason behind speed had changed from simple survival into protecting a future containing people he valued. Detritus had lost its leader, Star Guild had been exposed, and Gian had finally completed the revenge driving her for years. Su Hyun had earned S-rank recognition, and Mir had begun growing beside him as a true dragon companion. His public reputation now approached the heroic image he once rejected, even while the truth of regression remained hidden. The next stage would unfold in a world already diverging from the history that had once given him certainty. Somewhere beyond his recovery room, enormous resources were gathering around a new competition for the strongest awakeners. The man called God saw that competition as a chance to erase every rival claim to supremacy. He did not need a hidden guild or disguised entity. He wanted the entire world watching the comparison. That ambition marked the next source-supported disturbance forming, while Su Hyun's second life continued reshaping established history. For now, Su Hyun had survived another altered crisis with more strength, more allies, and fewer disasters left untouched. Beyond him, God was preparing a ranking game intended to prove that only one S rank deserved the world's highest place.